Then he put my father's paintings up for auction. 5 of them. The ones Dad had promised would stay in the family forever. My brother Ryan didn't even wait until the funeral flowers had wilted before he started liquidating what he thought was his inheritance. I'm Olivia, and this is the story of how I lost everything I thought mattered and gained back something far more valuable. I was 24 when Dad got the diagnosis. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him 6 months, maybe a year if we were lucky. I was working as a graphic designer in Seattle at the time, had just landed my first major client, was dating someone I thought might be the one. But when I got that call from Dad, sitting in his studio surrounded by half-finished canvases, his voice shaking as he tried to sound brave, none of that mattered anymore. I packed up my apartment within a week. My boyfriend Marcus didn't understand. He kept saying things like, "Can't your brother help? And you're throwing away your career." We broke up 3 days before I moved back to Portland. Looking back now, I dodged a bullet. Anyone who couldn't understand why I needed to be with my dying father wasn't someone I wanted in my life anyway. Ryan, my older brother, had a different reaction when I told him I was moving home. "That's really noble of you, Liv," he said over the phone from his office in Manhattan. I could hear the clicking of his keyboard in the background. He was probably checking stock prices while we talked about our father's mortality. I wish I could do the same, but you know how it is. Amanda and I have the co-op, and my position at the firm is really demanding right now. But I'll visit when I can. He visited 3 times in 5 years. 3 times. The first year was the hardest. Dad was still strong enough to be angry about his body betraying him. He'd been a painter his whole life. Taught art at Portland State for 30 years before retiring to paint full-time. His hands were his everything, and watching the chemo make them shake, watching him struggle to hold a brush, broke something in both of us. But we adapted. On his good days, he'd sit in his studio, the one he'd built in the attic of our Victorian house on the east side, and he'd talk me through techniques. I'd be his hands. He'd describe the exact shade of blue he wanted for a sky, the way light hit water at dawn, and I'd mix the paints, make the strokes. Sometimes they were his paintings with my hands. Sometimes they became our paintings, something neither of us could have created alone. "You've got real talent, Livy," he told me one afternoon in year 2. We were working on a series he called Letters to Tomorrow. Big, abstract pieces, full of color and movement. "You should pursue this after I'm gone." "Dad, don't." "No, listen to me." He gripped my hand with surprising strength. "I need you to promise me something. Keep painting. Don't let anyone tell you it's not practical or you can't make a living at it. I've made a living at it for 40 years. You can too." I promised. I didn't know then how much that promise would come to mean. Year 3. Dad started hospice care at home. Ryan flew out for Christmas that year, stayed for 3 days. He spent most of that time on conference calls in the guest room. Amanda, his wife, complained about the house being too cold, the neighborhood being sketchy, and the lack of good restaurants nearby. She was a corporate attorney, the kind of person who wore her Rolex like a weapon and name-dropped judges at dinner parties. On their last morning there, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. I was coming down the stairs, and their voices carried through the old house. "I just don't see why Olivia had to move in," Amanda was saying. "They could have hired a nurse." "She wanted to play the martyr," Ryan replied. I could hear him pouring coffee. Always been like that. The sensitive artist, just like Dad. No head for business, no ambition. Well, when the time comes, at least the house will be worth something. That neighborhood is gentrifying like crazy. I looked it up. Properties are going for $900, $950. We could flip it or rent it out. "We'll see," Ryan said. "Dad and I need to have a conversation about his will at some point." I backed up the stairs silently, went to Dad's room, and said nothing. What was there to say? That my brother was already planning what to do with our childhood home before our father was even gone? Dad lasted 5 years. 5 years of chemo, radiation, clinical trials, good months and terrible months, hope and despair. 5 years of me learning to change IV bags, manage pain medications, help him to the bathroom when he was too weak to walk alone. 5 years of reading to him, painting with him, sitting beside his bed at 3 in the morning when the pain was too bad for sleep. Nina, my best friend from college, moved to Portland that 3rd year. She'd been teaching yoga in California but wanted a change. She ended up renting a place 2 blocks away, and she became my lifeline. On the nights when I couldn't stop crying, When the weight of watching someone you love disappear by degrees became too much, she'd come over with wine and terrible movies, and her calm, steady presence. "You're doing something beautiful," she told me once. "Not everyone gets to give this gift to their parent. The gift of time, of presence." Dad died on a Tuesday in October. The leaves were turning, his favorite time of year. He'd always said autumn was the most honest season, everything showing its true colors before the end. He went peacefully, at home, surrounded by his paintings and the people who loved him. Ryan arrived the next day with Amanda. They stayed at a hotel downtown. The funeral was small. Dad had outlived most of his friends, but his former students came, and some of the other artists he'd mentored over the years. They told stories about his generosity, his talent, his terrible jokes. Ryan gave a eulogy about what a great father Dad had been, how much he'd taught both of us about art and life. I saw Nina raise her eyebrows at me from across the room. Ryan had been absent for 95% of Dad's illness, but sure, he could stand up there and play the grieving son for an audience. The day after the funeral, Ryan showed up at the house at 8 in the morning. I was still in my pajamas, hadn't slept, was drinking coffee in Dad's studio and trying to figure out how to exist in a world where he wasn't. "We need to talk," Ryan said. He was wearing a suit. Who wears a suit to their childhood home the day after burying their father? "Can it wait?" I asked. "I haven't even—" "No, it can't wait. I'm flying back to New York tomorrow, and we need to sort some things out." He walked into the living room like he owned it, and I guess that's exactly what he thought. "I've been thinking about the estate. I'm going to need you to start packing up your things." I stared at him. "What?" "The house, Olivia. It's going to need to be sold or rented out. I've already had an appraiser come by yesterday." "Yesterday? During the funeral?" "After the funeral. Don't be dramatic. The point is, the place is worth about $950, which is better than I expected. But it needs work. Amanda knows a good staging company. We're thinking we could list it by the end of the month." My hands were shaking. "Ryan, Dad's will hasn't even been read yet." He gave me a condescending smile. "Liv, come on. We both know how this works. I'm the oldest son. Dad and I talked about this years ago. The house comes to me, along with the majority of the estate. You'll get something, obviously. Maybe some of the paintings, some cash. But the real assets, the property, the investments, those are mine to manage." "Dad never said anything to me about this." "Why would he? You were busy playing nurse. Someone had to think about the practical matters." He pulled out his phone. "I'm going to send you the contact info for a moving company. I think 60 days is more than fair for you to find a new place. Portland's got plenty of apartments in your price range." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This was my home. I'd spent the last 5 years here, had grown up here, had nursed our father through his final days here. And Ryan was talking about it like it was just another property to liquidate. "Oh, and the paintings in the studio," he continued, scrolling through his phone. "I've been in contact with a gallery owner, Marcus Brennan. He thinks Dad's recent work could fetch good prices at auction, especially the Letters to Tomorrow series. Apparently Dad's diagnosis has made him more collectible. Death cells." He said it so casually, like he was talking about stock options. "You can't sell those," I said. My voice sounded distant, disconnected. "Dad promised those would stay in the family. They will stay in the family. The money from them will—" "Look, Olivia, I know you're emotional right now, but you need to be realistic. You've been out of work for 5 years. You have no savings. You're going to need money to start over. The kindest thing I can do is liquidate these assets efficiently and make sure you get your share." That's when Amanda appeared in the doorway. "Ryan, the contractor is here. He wants to look at the kitchen." "Contractor?" I stood up. "What contractor?" "For the renovations," Amanda said, looking at me like I was slow. "The kitchen is very dated, and those bathrooms are from the 80s. We need to update before we list." "You brought a contractor here the day after the funeral?" "Ryan Seahill." "Olivia, you're being emotional. This is business. The faster we move on this, the better for everyone." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw them both out. But I was exhausted, wrung out from grief and shock, and some part of me still couldn't believe this was happening. This was my brother. We'd shared a childhood, had the same parents, grew up in this house. How could he be this cold? "The will reading is in 2 weeks," I finally said. Kim's office called yesterday. Can we please just wait until then before you start dismantling Dad's entire life? Ryan exchanged a look with Amanda. 2 weeks. But start packing anyway. Save yourself the rush. They left to talk to the contractor. I sat down on the floor of Dad's studio and cried until I couldn't anymore. That afternoon, I was packing up some of Dad's art supplies when I found it. A small leather journal tucked between two stretched canvases in the storage rack. I recognized it immediately. Dad had always kept journals, had filled dozens of them with sketches and thoughts and ideas for paintings. But this one was different. My name was written on the front in his handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. The first page was a letter, dated 3 months before he died. My dearest Livy, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm hoping you found this before your brother started treating this studio like a warehouse to be cleared. I need to tell you some things, and I'm doing it this way because I'm a coward. I should have said these words to your face, but I was afraid of what they'd make real. You gave me 5 years. 5 years of your life, your career, your future. You sat with me through the worst of it, held my hand through the pain, became my hands when mine wouldn't work anymore. You learned to paint not because you wanted to, but because I needed you to. And somewhere in all of that, you became an artist in your own right. Ryan visited 3 times. 3 times in 5 years. And each time, he spent more time on his phone than talking to me. I'm not angry at him. He's lived his whole life trying to prove something. I'm just not sure what. But I am clear about what kind of son he's been, especially at the end. I've made arrangements, Livy. Legal arrangements. Kim has my will, and it's going to surprise some people. Your brother thinks he knows what's coming. He's wrong. I need you to promise me something. When you hear what I've left you, don't feel guilty. Don't feel like you need to share it with Ryan to keep the peace. He made his choices. You made yours. These are simply the consequences. Keep painting. Turn the studio into something beautiful. The house is yours to do with as you wish, but I hope you'll keep it. It's always been more yours than anyone else's. You gave me time. Time is the only inheritance that truly matters. Everything else is just a way of making sure no one can steal your time again. I love you. Paint for both of us now. I read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. Then I texted Nina. Can I come over? I showed her the letter. We sat on her couch while she read it, her eyes widening. Liv, do you know what this means? I don't know. Maybe Dad left me some of the paintings? Some money? I think it's more than that. She handed the letter back. Your brother has been operating under an assumption. What if that assumption is completely wrong? What do I do until the will reading? You document everything. Every conversation with Ryan. Every decision he makes about the house. Just in case. I took her advice. When Ryan called 2 days later to tell me he'd sold 5 paintings from the Letters to Tomorrow series to a private collector for $36,000 each, I recorded the conversation. When he brought contractors through to get renovation estimates, I took pictures. When Amanda posted on Facebook about managing my late father-in-law's estate, I screenshot it. Nina let me stay with her most of that 2 weeks. I couldn't bear to be in the house while Ryan and Amanda treated it like their investment property. Ryan had the locks changed, said it was for security during the transition. I had to call him to get my own clothes. The night before the will reading, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Dad's letter, about his words. Time is the only inheritance that truly matters. What did that mean? And what had he arranged? The law office of David Kim was in a restored building in the Pearl District, all exposed brick and modern furniture. Ryan and Amanda were already there when I arrived with Nina. Ryan was wearing another suit. Amanda had her Rolex on full display. Olivia, Ryan said with a tight smile. Glad you could make it. Kim's assistant showed us into a conference room. Kim himself was a stern-looking man in his 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been Dad's attorney for 20 years. Thank you all for coming, he said, settling into his chair at the head of the table. This shouldn't take long. Robert was very clear about his wishes. Ryan leaned back in his chair, confident. Amanda had a small smile on her lips. Kim opened the file in front of him. Let me begin with the personal effects. Robert's art supplies, his journals, his personal books and belongings, these are all left to Olivia Chen. I nodded. That made sense. The vehicle, a 2015 Toyota Camry, also goes to Olivia. Ryan shifted slightly. I could tell he'd expected more of a division. Now, to the matter of the paintings. Robert's complete collection of finished works, including the Letters to Tomorrow series, the Autumn Meditations series, and all other pieces currently housed in the studio, are left to Olivia Chen, with the stipulation that she may sell them at her discretion but is encouraged to keep the studio as a working art space. Ryan's confident posture faltered. Wait, all the paintings? Kim continued without acknowledging the interruption. The property located at 2847 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard, including the house and all structures on the land, is left in its entirety to Olivia Chen. The room went silent. I could hear my own heartbeat. There must be a mistake, Ryan said. The house was supposed to come to me. Dad and I discussed this. Kim looked at him over his glasses. I assure you, Mr. Chen, there is no mistake. Your father was very explicit in his intentions. He revised this will 2 years ago, and I personally verified his wishes multiple times. Amanda's face had gone pale. But what about the money, the investments? I'm getting to that. Kim turned a page. Robert's investment portfolio, currently valued at approximately $1.8 million, is placed in a trust for Olivia Chen. The trust is structured to provide her with a living stipend while preserving the principal, with full control reverting to her at age 35. I couldn't breathe. $1.8 million. The house. The paintings. Everything. This is insane. Ryan stood up. He can't do this. I'm the eldest son. I'm the one who visited 3 times in 5 years. Mr. Kim's voice was sharp. Who was already liquidating assets before the will was even read? Yes, Mr. Chen. We know about the paintings you sold. 5 pieces from the Letters to Tomorrow series, sold without legal authority to do so. Those paintings belong to the estate, which makes their sale potentially fraudulent. Ryan's face went from red to white. I didn't know. You didn't wait to know. You assumed. Kim pulled out another document. Olivia, you have the legal right to pursue recovery of those paintings or their full market value, which I should tell you is considerably more than the $36,000 each that your brother accepted. Those pieces have been appraised at $70,000 to $90,000 each. I looked at Ryan. He was staring at the table, jaw clenched. Now, Mr. Kim continued, there is a bequest for you, Ryan. Your father left you $50,000 in cash, and his watch collection. He also included a letter for you, which I'll give you before you leave. $50,000. Out of an estate worth over $3 million, counting the house, investments, and paintings. Amanda stood up abruptly. This is unbelievable. We need to contest this. There's clearly been undue influence. She isolated him, manipulated him. Chen, Mr. Kim's voice could have cut glass. I would be very careful about making accusations you cannot prove. Your husband sold assets that didn't belong to him. Olivia would be well within her rights to press charges. I'd suggest you consider your position carefully before threatening legal action. Amanda grabbed her purse. Ryan, we're leaving. Wait, Ryan looked at me for the first time since the reading started. Liv, come on. This is crazy. We can work something out. You don't need all of this. You're my sister. I thought about all the times he could have called over the past 5 years. All the times he could have come home, could have helped, could have been there. All the times he chose his career, his wife, his life in New York over being present for our dying father. You're right, I said quietly. I am your sister, which is why it hurt so much when you treated me like an inconvenience. When you showed up at the funeral and acted like you'd been here all along. When you started selling Dad's paintings before his body was even cold. I didn't know. You didn't ask. You assumed. You assumed you knew what Dad wanted, what the will would say, what you deserved. You assumed wrong. Ryan's eyes were shining. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Kim, I said. What are my options regarding the paintings Ryan sold? You can sue for their return or their full appraised value. Given the circumstances, I believe we'd have a strong case. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. He'd built his whole identity on being the successful one, the important one, the one who didn't need anything from anyone. And now he was facing consequences for the first time in his life. I want them back, I said. Or their full value, whichever is possible. Ryan's chair scraped as he stood. You're really going to do this? To your own brother? You sold our father's paintings. Paintings he made while dying. Paintings I helped him create. Yeah, Ryan, I'm really going to do this. He left without another word. Amanda followed, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. When they were gone, Mr. Kim handed me an envelope. Your father also left you a letter. I opened it there, in the conference room, with Nina's hand on my shoulder and Mr. Kim politely looking away. Livy, if you're reading this, you've just sat through what was probably a very uncomfortable will reading. I'm sorry for that. I could have told Ryan years ago what I planned, but I wanted to believe he might change, might show up, might become the son I always hoped he could be. He didn't. And that's not your fault or your problem. Here's what I need you to understand. This isn't a reward for taking care of me. You didn't earn this money or this house by being a good daughter. You already were a good daughter. This is simply me trying to give you back some of what you sacrificed. You gave up 5 years of your life for me. 5 years you could have spent building a career, falling in love, traveling, living. You gave me your time. And time is the one thing we can never get back. The money isn't payment. It's freedom. Freedom to paint, to live, to choose what matters to you without worrying about rent or bills, or whether you can afford to pursue your art. That's all I ever wanted for you. Ryan got what he valued. Money in the bank and expensive watches. You got what you value, I hope. Time, and creative freedom, and a home. One more thing. In the studio, behind the storage rack on the north wall, there's a loose board. Behind it, you'll find something I've been saving for you. A project I started after you moved home. I think you'll like it. I love you, Livy. Paint for both of us now. I cried then. Not sad tears. Not entirely. Tears of relief, of grief, of gratitude, of overwhelming love for a father who'd seen me, really seen me, and wanted to make sure I'd be okay when he was gone. Nina drove me back to the house. My house. I still couldn't wrap my head around it. We went straight to the studio, to the north wall. Behind the storage rack, just like Dad said, was a loose board. Behind it was a portfolio, leather-bound and heavy. Inside were paintings. Dozens of them. Small pieces, studies, experiments, and every single one was signed with 2 names, Robert Chen and Olivia Chen. He kept them, I whispered. Every single piece we made together. At the bottom of the portfolio was a note. Our collaboration. This is your foundation. Build from here. The next 6 months were a blur. I sued Ryan for the full appraised value of the 5 paintings he'd sold, $400,000 total. His attorney tried to negotiate down, but Mr. Kim was relentless. We won. Ryan had to liquidate assets to pay me, and from what I heard through mutual friends, the financial strain combined with Amanda realizing there was no big inheritance after all led to divorce papers being filed. I felt bad about the divorce for about 5 minutes. Then I remembered her planning kitchen renovations the day after Dad's funeral. I turned the studio into something Dad would have been proud of. I partnered with Nina to create an art and wellness space. The ground floor became her yoga studio. The second floor was my gallery and workspace. The attic, Dad's original studio, stayed exactly as it was, sacred space where I painted every morning. We started offering classes to underprivileged kids, art instruction, yoga, meditation. We called it the Robert Chen Center for Creative Time. Because time, I'd learned, was everything. I dated a little. There was a graphic designer I met at a gallery opening, a teacher who took one of Nina's classes. Nothing serious yet, but I wasn't worried. I had time. My first solo exhibition was called Letters to Tomorrow, A Daughter's Response. The paintings were my answer to Dad's final series, my way of continuing the conversation we'd started in his last years. They sold well. Art critics called them raw and unflinchingly honest. I didn't care about the reviews. I cared that I was painting, really painting, the way Dad had always wanted me to. Ryan called once, about 8 months after the will reading. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Hey, he said. His voice sounded different, smaller. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, for all of it. The way I acted after Dad died, the paintings, showing up 3 times in 5 years. All of it. I didn't say anything. Sorry wasn't enough, couldn't be enough. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, he continued. And I'm not asking for anything. I just needed to say it. You were there for him. I wasn't. And you deserved everything he left you. I can see that now. Okay, I said. I heard about your gallery, about the center you started. Dad would have loved that. He would have. There was a long pause. Do you think, maybe someday, we could try to be siblings again? I thought about it, really thought about it. Maybe, I said finally. But that would require you to actually show up, Ryan. Not just when it's convenient, not just when you want something. Actually show up. I know. I'm working on it. I'm in therapy, actually. Trying to figure out why I spent my whole life trying to prove something that didn't need proving. That's good. I'm glad. We talked for a few more minutes. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. But maybe it was the start of something. Or maybe it wasn't. Either way, I had learned that I couldn't force people to be who I needed them to be. I could only decide who I was going to be. A year after Dad died, I found one more letter. It was tucked into one of his old journals, the ones I'd been slowly working through, reading his thoughts and looking at his sketches. Livy, if you're finding this, you've been reading my journals. I'm glad. They're full of terrible ideas and mediocre sketches, but they're also full of a life spent doing what I loved. I hope you're living the same kind of life. I don't know what happened at the will reading, what Ryan said or did, whether you fought or made peace. I don't know if you kept the house or sold it, kept the paintings or auctioned them all. I don't know if you're painting or if you went back to graphic design or if you're doing something completely different. But I know this. You gave me the most precious gift anyone can give. You gave me your time. You sat with me through the darkest part of my life and made it bearable. More than bearable. You made it meaningful. Time is the only currency that matters. Money comes and goes. Houses can be built and sold. Paintings can be created and destroyed. But time, once given, is forever. Thank you for giving me yours. Use what I've left you to protect your own. All my love. I hung that letter in the studio, right next to the collaborative paintings we'd made together. Some mornings, when the light came through the attic windows just right, I'd read it again and remember what Dad had taught me. Time is the only inheritance that truly matters. Everything else is just a way of making sure no one can steal your time again. I was painting for both of us now, and I had all the time in the world.